as always, I hope that you enjoy. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated. Story Double 1. Wide Berth, written by Hicks Camber. We've got a human moving through the main concourse. Sarod tapped the view screen with the stylus, and the auto-tracking software picked up the other cameras, pulling their attention to the selected being in the crowd. His companion, unawed, glanced up at the screen. How can you tell? The being is fully shrouded. There is no species identification going through. Sarad didn't respond immediately. He tapped quickly on the console and pulled up a video from the archives, casting it to the Ord's view. What's this? Ord squinted at the video. It seemed to be an old 2D footage of an aquatic environment. A large swarm of simple creatures filled most of the shot, but occasionally broke apart as a much larger creature moved through. That is an archive that I picked up from Earth Network before quarantine went up. The big creature is called a shark. It is the second most perfect killing machine to ever evolve on their planet. The only limitation it has is that it is generally bound to the ocean environments you see there. Ord pulled his gaze from the screen and focused on Sarad. Okay, so what does this have to do with the human you think you see? He looked back at the screen where the unknown being was still moving through the crowd. Well, look at the Galaxian there. He's bigger than most of the other travelers here, but he still bumps into folks as he goes. He has to make his path through some resistance. He's big, but he is no threat to anyone there. Ord looked at the Galaxian. Yeah, everyone knows Galaxians are gentle, never intentionally violent. So what? Sarad continued. Now, look at the human. Not a single touch to anyone in that crowd, but still they move through it. They aren't speaking, no pardon me or anything. If they were, the surveillance would have already picked up and processed for translation and checked against active search patterns. No, they're making no indication at all of their intended movements, and yet they are passing through unhindered. Now, what does that look like? Ord glanced back at the archive footage. My stars, how is that possible? Humans are one creature from Earth more dangerous than the sharks. They seem to radiate a predatory presence wherever they go, and non-predator species naturally keep their distance. There seems to be a raw, universal instinct at work. So, what do we do now? The quarantine of Earth is still in effect. We're supposed to report any confirmed sightings of humans outside the line of Galactic Council. We're going to do nothing. As you said, there hasn't been any species identification by any computer yet. So all we have is a wild speculation from a pair of overworked and underpaid security officers. Right? Yeah. Sarad pressed forward. So what we're gonna do is watch and wait. If nothing happens, then nothing happens. If something happens, we'll deal with the cleanup afterwards. There is nothing that we can do to prevent anything now. They're already here. All we can do is hope they complete their business quickly and leave without incident. Sarad pulled a small drone from a nearby drawer and tapped quickly on the display pad on its front. A few moments later, the drone rose from the desk and zipped out of the office and into the main concourse. He turned to the screen and watched as the drone flew quietly towards the human. The drone emitted a polite chime, and the hidden human stopped. Do not remove your cloak. Automated species identification has not determined your species. Do not speak. Indicate on the screen the nature of your business, and we will attempt to expedite it so that you might leave quickly. A portion of the cloak rose, an obscured hand reached towards the screen. A few deft movements later, and the screen glowed with a word, with a green square and a red square beneath it. Pelusium. The hand tapped the green square through the cloth. Follow me, do not speak. I'll relay your business to reduce risk of identification. The drone darted off down the corridor, with the human following closely behind, the crowd parting quickly. Predatory presence required some respectful distance, predatory intent required quite a bit more. Left, right, left, third stall on the right. The screen arrived only a few moments before the human. "Greetings, proprietor. Entity wishes to acquire Plusium 100-gram quantity. Entity proposes 40,000 credits." The proprietor glared at the screen. "Proprietor thinks entity should be less insulting with such an offer. That's barely above cost. Proprietor is urged to complete transaction with minimal conflict. Listen, I got business to run here. I don't..." The human pulled the cloak down enough to expose both eyes, which bored into the proprietor. He rattled in a barely suppressed terror, and then nodded to the screen. 40,000 then. He reached under the counter and pulled out a small vial of purple powder into view. The eyes glared at the screen and spoke again. "Crystalline, proprietor." He nodded again, clearly becoming more frightened the longer the human stood in the stall. He provided a different vial with a single glowing crystal, encased in a portable containment generator. The cloaked hand reached forward and took it, putting it into the folds of its cloak. In his hand, the proprietor saw the payment chip. The human swept away wordlessly, the drone zipping ahead, leading the way to the docking bay. Back at the security office, Sarod and Ord exhaled in relief. The system still hadn't identified the being in question, but the moment it reached its ship, it was no longer their problem. "So, Ord ventured, why would the human want crystalline Plusium? Why not the powdered form? It's much more stable." "That human will probably eject the Plusium the first moment they get. It's no good for them except as a linguistic warping substance. It alters their perception of language so that words have different meanings. No, they don't care about the Plusium. They wanted a containment generator. My guess, they'll back-engineer it like they do every single piece of scrap that gets through quarantine. And soon enough, they'll break the line completely." "What then?" "When?" "What happens when the humans break quarantine?" "Same thing that happens every time a predator breaks out of a cage." "Wait, that'll endanger all of us. We should report this immediately." Ord, listen. I'm a Dreen. You're a Hurrian. We're the same species split across two homeworlds. Before the quarantine went up, the humans asked for help from many members of the Galactic Council. Of all the species, only mine agreed." Ord stared in shock. "The Dween are aiding the humans?" Sarod pulled a plasma blaster from under the desk and leveled it at Ord. "The humans have a saying which I think is very fitting here. It is better to stand at the right hand of the devil than in his path. The Dream will stand with the humans on the ashes of the council, and we will finally be free of them." Sarad pulled the trigger. End of story. Story number 2. The Many-Limbed Ones, written by Guncaster. We thought them some strange insectoid creatures who had replaced their shells with metal, or perhaps covered their exposed chitin with suits at all times. The eerie, unmoving gazes, number of limbs, and seeming lack of pain. They spread like bugs too, infesting our stations and taking up positions wherever they could fit. Maintenance jobs, with a high turnover by virtue of being universally lethal. Management positions of such stress that only AI could handle them. Artistry, food preparation, teaching. It seems that these creatures were just as adaptive culturally as they were physiologically. Indeed, every time they did something for a while, one or both of their upper limbs would seemingly reform to fit the task. It was a little over 3 of their years after first contact that the truth came to light. Pirates boarded one of our trading hubs, pirates of our own kind who knew exactly how the station worked and where to strike to take over without resistance, assuming it was manned by only our own kind, of course. They didn't expect an upright walking insectoid with skin tougher than most combat armor, a tail armored in a strange synthetic crystal, and a seemingly no flight instinct. The males of the species universally bulkier than the females, something they shared with us, took a railgun slug to the shoulder, between the middle and upper limbs when he stood up to the boarding party. A fist-sized chunk blown out straight of his upper torso. Not only blood and viscera, but metal and wiring smashed against the wall along with the deformed slug. By all expectations, it should have gone through the alien and cut through the wall before it stopped. But it seemed their natural armor, or what we once thought it was far tougher than we thought. Explains the lack of major injuries in those 3 years, despite the dangerous jobs that they often took. Now, I'm sure you're itching to know where they came from, the big reveal of what our neighbors really are. You already know what they are, of course. It seems that extreme stress follows them to make full use of their freakish strength, far above anything their size would suggest. Indeed, watching a mortally wounded alien rip into an 8-foot, undoubtedly drugged-up member of a warrior caste with his bare hands, laughing through the digital distortion of his envirosuit and muttering about huge guts, is an experience. The rest of the boarding party surrendered their arms at the sight, thankfully, and we handed them over to the authorities without incident. Our friend, however, was much worse for wear. It was a miracle that he was alive. Most would have bled out in minutes from that injury. It was rather unsettling still, seeing his iron-based blood flowing to no end from the wound, and the man still walking to the order dock and uploading the encyclopedia's worth of data onto the machine from his PDA. It was more unsettling still, watching him climb into the machine and a half-metal, half-flesh primate getting peeled out of a combo of environment suit and exoskeleton, and pumped full of chemical mix that, as far as our order dock was concerned, should kill a clan elder. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed,